So I'm all about showing people that sexual energy is creative life force energy and showing them how to take that energy. And if you're not just making babies with it, how to actually use it as a tangible, procreative source to create and manifest in your life, to heal yourself, revitalize yourself, to supercharge your intimate relationship, but far beyond that, taking this energy and channeling it out into the world to manifest and build your life with. So, I distinguish between junk food sex and gourmet sex in the same vein, right? Is like you could eat something that's a quick hit and enticing, and maybe you get a bit of a high from it, but then there's generally a depletion. You get a crash afterward, maybe even some guilt and remorse, and it's doing nothing to long term build your body. It's probably doing the opposite. You've got neurotoxins and things that you want to probably remove out of your system afterward. And then you have a gourmet sex or food encounter that's full of multi layers of nutrients and regeneration that's actually helping to build your body, build your spirit, and turn you into a better person, a better functioning being.
Kim Anami, thank you for coming on the show. We started following each other on Instagram, I don't know, 6, 7 months ago. I would like to talk about what you do, but also first dive into how you've improved your health and maintain a very lean, physically fit physique. I know you have embarked on weightlifting and eating higher protein diets. How did you come across that information, and what changes did you make to your diet and exercise plan?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And this has been a passion of mine for years. And look, most of my adult life, I had a set weight and been into health and wellness, have an organic food diet for, 3 decades, and been a weightlifter, a surfer, like athletic person for a long time. But then I hit a plateau a few years ago where I gained a bunch of weight and like 20 pounds out of the blue. Like I just didn't even really understand. Well, first I'd lost muscle. So I was surfing like 3 hours a day, and I didn't know. I thought I had a decent amount of protein going into my body, but I really didn't know the what I know now about, like 1.2 grams per pound of body weight or more, right? I'm more like 1.3 or 4 these days. And so because I was surfing so much, and wasn't getting adequate protein, I lost a bunch of muscle in my butt and my legs. And then I was a little bit less active for a few years. It was during COVID and lockdowns, and I wasn't getting the same degree of working out and surfing I normally did. And I put on a bunch of fat, and I was like, where did my ass go? Like, what is going on with my body? And then I learned and then I tried to reset it myself, right? But I was really struggling and I couldn't. So I enlisted a trainer and went on a different program. And I kind of knew I'd been hearing, I didn't even know what a macro was. I'd never counted a calorie in my life. My diet and exercise was all, I got trainers once in a while, but dietary speaking, some research I did, but like mostly intuitively eating. And I look back on it and I'm kind of surprised. Like I would have been eating half the protein then than I eat now, that I was even able to put on muscle, but whatever, I was. Not like now. It's a much different, like shredded kind of lean muscle that I've been able to cultivate. But yeah, I started off with a trainer. We did a cut and really upped my protein. I had no idea that I was eating as much sugar as I was. And by sugar, that's healthy sugar, like coconut sugar or dates. Like I was not eating, hadn't eaten refined sugar in decades. I was pretty low carb anyway. But the being super, disciplined and focused on getting high quality, especially animal protein, which I'm integrating in more and more to my diet. Like I was just in LA, and have you heard of Sage Regenerative Bistro?
Yes, I know the controversy behind that, behind Chef Molly.
Well, she was a full vegan icon restaurant, and now they've shifted to like venison patties and bison burgers. They still have vegan options, but so I just ate from there every day,
Nice.
and it was fantastic. I loved it. So, um, Yeah, integrating high quality protein, really upping that amount, being much more structured with my workouts, like working with a trainer for every single session. Even though I do it remotely, I bring her to the gym with me on my iPhone, and like every set and rep, I'm actually amazed at how effective it's been. Right. I was a little like, whatever, we'll try it and see. But she's able to see like when I'm just at failure, you know what I mean? She can see every little nuance of my sets and reps. So it's been amazing. Like I lost the weight, been lower like since like 17 years old. This is the weight that I was at when I was 17, but much more shredded and muscular and loving it. It's been such a gratifying journey. And I've always been disciplined and passionate about exercise and working out and diet, but this new level of information has just made a massive impact. And in a really, I'd say, short period of time, like so wildly effective.
And it seems sustainable. I mean, you're enjoying the foods that you're eating. I would like to hear a little bit more about how you're getting animal protein. I've been to Bali as well, beautiful island, beautiful place in the world. It seems that there's a lot of vegan and vegetarian type options there. Has it that been hard to get sufficient protein?
Well, at the moment, like fish is easy. I've been able to get, like, I'm eating a lot of fish, and they do have organic grass-fed steak here. I don't cook that much, so I need people to cook it for me. I don't cook at all. There's organic eggs as well, but I'd love to find some. I love the idea of bison and venison, like these wilder meat products. So that I know they're around because there was an island I was going to go on a surfing retreat to, like off the coast of Sumatra, and they were saying, "Oh, we use some, local bison here." And I'm like, "Okay, so it's around. I don't know if I don't think anyone's really done it yet." I was looking for raw milk and I couldn't find anyone unless it's just very quiet and I haven't tapped into the source yet. Maybe it is happening. So it's not as easily plentiful, but it's here, right? If you could, just with the steak and the eggs, and maybe you could get some milk and some wild and fish for sure, then yeah, it's definitely doable.
Today's show with Kim Anami is brought to you by Myoscience Nutrition. As you can tell, we're talking a lot about the importance of a healthy libido, sexual performance, and also maintaining desire in long-term relationships. I think you'll really get a lot of value from this episode. Now, if you're a male looking to optimize your performance in and outside the bedroom, there's a tool for you. It's called Morning Wood. This includes bovine testicular extract along with ashwagandha, zinc, and magnesium. This unique combination has received a lot of great feedback over at Myoscience because it helps to optimize hormone levels and support healthy testosterone levels in men. I've personally received a lot of great phone calls from individuals, people just like you, who have taken this formulation and noticed results, as I mentioned, inside and outside the bedroom, along with exercise efficiency and capacity. I personally put this formula together because I have used these different ingredients from other companies and have put it together and found this to be very effective when taken at night, 3 capsules in the evening time. Can be quite profound. You can see some of the reviews over at myoscience.com to see what other people are saying. But if you're a male looking to help your vitality as well as performance in and outside the bedroom, please check out some of those reviews over at myoscience.com. I'll put links in the description below, and you can save with the code podcast at checkout. So let's cut back to it with Kim. I think you'll really enjoy this show, especially her jade egg tips. This is something that I think a lot of women and a lot of couples can benefit from. So here we go. Amazing. And were you eating more of a vegan style diet prior to this shift several years ago?
I was doing pescatarian. Like I was a vegan, but I ate fish. I'm not really, like, it's not a vegan, but I ate fish. But I started to get a little bit wary about fish sources with the ocean because after like Fukushima and just knowing what gets put into the ocean, I thought, well, land-based animals, there's actually more control about what's going into them. So I hadn't eaten land-based animals in 30 years. And I went to this place called Quixmala in Mexico. It's this 33,000 eco uh, biodynamic preserve, and all their food is grown. 93% of their food is grown there, including their animals, which were biodynamic cattle. And I just had this intuitive nudge after 30 years of not having steak to eat a steak. I went to lunch and every single person ordered like New York steak. And I was like, I've always followed my intuition, right? It wasn't like I have an ethical issue with cows. Like, no, I didn't. It was just what my body seemed to be telling me to do. And I was never, honestly, one of those people who like my life fell apart on a vegan diet and then I ate steak and everything. I wasn't me. So I didn't have that issue. But I had the intuitive nudge, let's try some animal products or beyond fish. So I had my first steak in 30 years. I swear I chewed it 300 times because it was such a foreign, tough substance in my mouth. And then I had a steakgasm. I had an orgasm eating the steak
Wow.
because I guess my body, my brain, my whole being full on, and it was on tape, like someone record, and it lasted for half an hour. It took me probably an hour to eat this steak because I was savoring. And I think also for my body to be like, okay, these enzymes we've put on the shelf and haven't looked at for decades, let's go grab those. We're going to need these. But it was magical. And I think honestly, that was probably the highest caliber beef on the planet, right? These are not just grass-fed cows, organic cows, but biodynamic. They're eating all biodynamic foods. So the mana, the energy that would have been in them would have been off the charts, right? Like if only, we could all eat like that all the time.
That's amazing. And when was this? This was several years ago. And since you've started eating more and more ruminant animals and
Yeah, that was in 2019.
Hmm.
And then, during COVID, I tried to eat more animals. Like I was eating raw liver even and lots of butter and egg and steak and lamb. But then I gained a lot of weight. And it was definitely a stressful period in my life, but I hadn't, like I said, I hadn't gained weight like that in decades. It was really odd. And so I dialed it back. I'd gone to the Maldives on this full surf retreat experience for a month, and I just started because they didn't have where I was, they only had fish. So I just dialed out the animal products, went back to eating fish because I know my body exists very well with fish and fruit and vegetables. And then I dropped a bunch of weight. And then it kind of went up and down for a bit. And then I just, with the more and more that I've learned about the bioavailability in meat and the nutrients, I'm like, well, you can't really argue with that. And so I've just tried to integrate, like when I went to LA, I was excited somebody else could be cooking it for me, that I could try these different things. I'd had venison like 30 years ago, and it was one of the best things I'd ever eaten. I was like, this is such incredible food. And so to integrate it more, and then I'm very tuned into my body. So I could really feel into like, how do I feel? Is there anything off about this? And my weight has been stable and my energy has been stable, and I'm feeling drawn to eat it more and more. So it was a little back and forth, but now I feel like I really want it to be part of my daily diet.
amazing. And how has that affected your social connections? Because I would imagine if you had been a vegan or pescatarian for 30 plus years, most of your friends and people that you associated with probably ate similarly. Now you're eating more red meat and animal products. Has that negatively impacted your social connections or expanded or constricted that?
Not at all. During that time, I had partners who were full carnivores, and we just accepted each other. He'd have a steak and I'd have chickpea curry or whatever at the time, or he'd catch a fish and I'd eat the fish. So no, it was never an issue. Like I said, I never had judgment. It wasn't an ideological big divide, like, oh, you meat eat. Like, I didn't give a shit. You eat what you eat. I eat what I eat. If that works for you, great. If this works for me, great. So if we ever went out someplace, it was more like I just wouldn't eat GMO food. That was where the divide would be. If we'd go to a restaurant and I couldn't eat anything on the menu, I would just drink water. I'd eat a meal beforehand, come out with people for an event and drink water or have a coconut or whatever, and then, eat before and after. It was just an adaptation I made willingly over the years, and it never bothered me. Like, I'm excited that there's like seed oil scout these days, or there's more of the, like sage. Like, okay, great, there's a restaurant I could actually go and eat at, and everyone could, because sage actually has vegan stuff and meat stuff and it's like really high caliber food. So no, that never affected any, even within partnerships, right? Like
Yeah.
we just always accepted that about each other and worked with it, and it never bothered me.
Amazing. And speaking of partnerships, I would like to know what you do for work, and how would you describe what you do in terms of education, helping couples and also individuals with libido and sexual function? Can you describe for our audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I consider myself a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter, vaginal kung fu master. So I'm all about showing people that sexual energy is creative life force energy and showing them how to take that energy. And if you're not just making babies with it, how to actually use it as a tangible, procreative source to create and manifest in your life, to heal yourself, revitalize yourself, to supercharge your intimate relationship. But far beyond that, taking this energy and channeling it out into the world to manifest and build your life with. So, I distinguish between junk food sex and gourmet sex in the same vein, right? Is like you could eat something that's a quick hit and enticing, and maybe you get a bit of a high from it, but then there's generally a depletion. You get a crash afterward, maybe even some guilt and remorse, and it's doing nothing to long term build your body. It's probably doing the opposite. You've got neurotoxins and things that you want to probably remove out of your system afterward. And then you have a gourmet sex or food encounter that's full of multi layers of nutrients and regeneration that's actually helping to build your body, build your spirit, and turn you into a better person, a better functioning being. And so that's what I'm spend so much time educating people about. Like, why would you want to have high quality gourmet sex? What is it going to do for your life and yourself and your relationship?
I love that. And I want to get into the details of that, but I think it's important to address this conversation from a few different perspectives. And I think physical health really impacts the quality of our vitality and also sex life and libido. Have you found that to be the case? I know that for myself personally and partners over the years. Where do you start with this? If someone is not having good sex or has a really low libido, do you start with the foundations of nutrition or do you go directly towards organs? Like, where do you start with this?
I would go more to deeper emotional and mental root causes. Like I work multidimensionally. And so, yes, having a clean, whole foods, organic, nutrient rich diet, definitely a part of it. But to me, that isn't the solution, right? That is an adjunct that should just be a given, in anybody's journey, really. But I'm looking more for what are the, so I look at it, I talk about something I call the Anami guarantee, which is that everyone can. Every woman can have orgasms, G-spot orgasms, squirting ejaculate that hits the ceiling, cervical orgasms. Every woman can have a high, voracious libido. Every woman can lubricate profusely at any stage and age of her life. Every woman can have an orgasmic birth. Every man can be multi-orgasmic, can last for 3 hours or 8 hours at a time. Every man can learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation. So I don't buy into the narrative and the cop out and the participation trophy philosophy that they're there. It's okay. Some people can and some people can't. No, I guarantee that absolutely everyone can do these things. The reasons why they don't are they have some kind of beliefs, programming, trauma that they have had imprinted upon them along the way that's blocking the pure expression of this energy in all of its glory. And so my work is to try to show people what's possible and then help them figure out, okay, well, what's gotten in the way of that expression?
And is most of that trauma sexual related trauma, or can it be just other emotional trauma, psychological abuse? What have you found in terms of, and I'm sure everyone's a little bit different, but the main sources of trauma that negatively impact the ability to have what you call gourmet sex?
Definitely sexual trauma, that's huge. And, to some degree or another, we've all often sustained it, whether it's circumcising young boys or being violated in some way against our will. Everyone, and even the beliefs that we take in, right? Like Madonna whore, right? Like women are either sluts or they're virgins. And it's like hard to find a in-between ground where women are okay to be salacious, sensual goddess beings. So, yes, all of the above. And then, even, yes, psychological abuse and trauma, like anything that is stopping our emotional and sexual expression. And we live in a world where that's just par for the course. Like, I think that's even why we're here is to get these challenges imposed upon us. And then we have to work our way through them. And that's how we grow.
That's a very interesting perspective, I think. That's far different from a sort of victim mindset. The idea, and of course, things happen to people that are just horrific, and we don't want to endorse that in any way, shape, or form. But you and I are probably both here and have platforms because we had a setback with our own health or in our lives, and we learn how to overcome that. We want to share that with other people, and so I do think that there's a lot of value. There's a book called The Gift of Injury, and I would
Mhm.
never want to be injured intentionally, but all the injuries that I've had, for example, over my life have actually caused me to learn more about the body and change and adapt in different ways and become stronger on the other side. And so, where do you start with people with different sorts of trauma? Peter Levine has a lot of great books in the polyvagal theory and things like that. Is it meditation? Where do you start with this?
Well, interesting you mentioned that because I believe that in my experience in decades of doing this work, over 3 decades, is that the biggest and fastest nervous system reset and most effective is orgasm. And, nothing resets the autonomic nervous system faster. And for women, the vagus nerve is connected to the cervix. And so cervical orgasms in women actually do the best at soothing and activating the vagus nerve in the most positive of ways. Like when women have these kinds of orgasms, they use phrases like seeing God, being reborn, fresh, clean slate, vibrating in ecstasy for days afterward. And, the same experiences are available for men in this gourmet sex arena. And so part of what I do, in my own podcast, Orgasmic Enlightenment, is all about showing people what's possible. We have a segment called Well Fucked All Stars where I interview people who've had amazing breakthroughs in this work to show people here's what's possible. Here's a woman who never had an orgasm in her life, thought she was just one of those women who couldn't because she bought into that faulty narrative, and now is having nipple orgasms, anal orgasms, multiple cervical orgasms, has 4 birthgasms under her belt, all of these experiences that in a very short period of time, within a year of doing this work, and even shorter for some of it. And so it's partly just like, here's what's possible. You don't know what you don't know. Here's the Yanami guarantee, everyone can, and here are the steps to get there. And yeah, part of it is really just helping people to clear these blockages and become conscious of the ideas and beliefs they may have taken on that they might not even be fully conscious that they took on, right? Or not making associations between, let's say, a woman who has what they in allopathic world very naively call, vagina on lockdown, like a woman has pain during sex or a tightening up of her vagina, and they don't acknowledge or even make the connection that her history of sexual abuse that's never been processed or healed is actually what's contributing to her vagina on lockdown, where her vagina, rightfully so, is saying, hey, heal me and then we can get to play. But before that, the body is always giving us messages. So it's trying to undo the damage of the allopathic system, which is saying, your body dumb, shut up, dumb body, put drugs in body, cut organs out of body, it's so dumb, to actually your body is full of wisdom and intelligence and divine messaging. Let's listen to it and reconnect to it. And that's your source of power.
That sounds amazing. I feel like the clit is not really taught. A lot of men are clit illiterate, and there's a lot of like clitoral orgasms, a lot of talk, and some books out there helping men better understand the clitoris. But in your opinion, what I've read on your blog is clitoral orgasms are nothing compared to cervical orgasms. So, can you speak to that a little bit to help men, particularly, better understand how to help their partner possibly have a cervical orgasm?
Absolutely. And yeah, that is my view, is that the clitoris is great as a warm-up, as an appetizer, but it was never meant to be the end result, the final resting place in terms of female orgasms. And that if women have only ever had clitoral orgasms, then they're actually really being shortchanged. And I can see why they might take it or leave it when it comes to sex, because it's such a comparatively superficial, oh, that was fun. It's like eating a chocolate bar, right? Of getting a rush and, oh, it's kind of cool. And then a decline in energy, where I say that the clitoris is literally the tip of the iceberg. It's 10% of the pleasure and power that a woman has available to her. 90% of that is in the vagina. So that means G-spot orgasms, squirting, ejaculation, and primarily the queen, the epicenter, which I would consider to be the cervix. And that this is the be all end all of orgasms for women. So in Taoist reflexology, the cervix is considered to be the heart point. And like I said, there's this vagus nerve connection going all the way up through the heart to the crown chakra. And that's why women often describe them as transcendental spiritual awakening happenings that go on with them. And my early experiences were of that nature. And I had a cervical orgasm before I'd ever even had a clitoral orgasm. And, when I did, I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's fun, but like nothing compared to what the cervix has to offer, which is like the true definition of le petit mort, the little death and rebirth, this magnificent reset, full body, cellular from our core reset of who we are. And I would have these experiences and feel like I would become more of my true self, like conditioning and false layers of civilizing that were superimposed upon me would just fall away. And I would feel more of my truer and most authentic self. So these are self-actualizing tools, like the greatest personal growth tool available for women. And so, yes, you can spend some time at the clitoris, but so many people are just sexually illiterate, female orgasm illiterate, where they don't realize that the vagina is actually where it's at. All the good stuff is in the vagina. And so, because so many women and men have bought into this narrative that, oh, the clitoris is how women have orgasms, like that's the only orgasm, which is so untrue and so ignorant, that they ignore the vagina. Most vaginas are numb. And one of the things I'm most famous for is my hashtag things I lift with my vagina vaginal kung fu campaign, where I've traveled the world lifting objects indigenous to various regions with my vagina to show what vaginas can actually do, and using a jade egg as a strengthening tool and a way to wake up, resensitize, increase pleasure and orgasmic potential, lubrication, reverse pelvic organ prolapse, and urinary incontinence, all in this magic panacea of a tool, the jade egg, that helps to awaken the vagina and let women have these kinds of experiences that they didn't even know were possible, because they're fixated on their clitoris, and they just think, they have sex so that their partner can have an orgasm, and they don't even feel that much. And if they've never had vaginal orgasms, I almost don't blame them, right? Their vagina is numb. There's not much going on there. Why would they bother? And the messaging that they get reinforced in the culture at large from the allopathic community is nothing's in the vagina. There's no nerve, whatever garbage they put out there, like, that discourage women from going on that journey. So that's been a huge part of my messaging and teaching for so many years, because it's been such a big part.
Amazing. I haven't dove into your specific podcast there, but so where do women start? I know you have courses and books and different things that people can download and so forth, but for folks that are listening here and they're intrigued by this idea of having a cervical or G-spot orgasm and experiencing all the benefits that you mentioned as a result of having that orgasm, is the jade egg a good place to start? Like how does someone sort of denumb or awaken their vagina?
The jade egg is a great place to start, and I sell a do-it-yourself kit on my Anami Alchemia website, the jade egg kit, and sell on it. I have a full program called Vaginal Kung Fu, which runs in February, and that's where it's a full 10-week program on all things awakening the vagina and getting it ready for these deeper orgasms and how to use the jade egg. I have a men's course called Sexual Mastery for Men that's coming up very soon. And that's from the male perspective of how to open your woman and help her to get to these orgasmic places while developing your own sexual stamina and abilities and masculine power.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's really important for folks to understand this. And I think one place to start could be, warm ups, different positions I found, and then also where your woman is on the cycle, on her cycle, and that affects her cervical placement and, things like that. Have you found that to be more around ovulation? Is it different than, say, in the luteal phase? How much does that play into this?
Zero. I mean, once you've really opened up your sexual potential or your woman's sexual potential, it doesn't matter what time she's on her cycle, what stage of the cycle. Yes, the cervix can move position a little bit, but that it has no bearing. When you really unlock the woman at a deeper level, she's available anytime, anywhere. All of these experiences are fully accessible to her anytime, anywhere. That's the
Wow,
Anami mantra, is anytime, anywhere.
that is so wild. And once one experiences this, excuse me, is it easier to then continue to experience this cervical orgasm specifically?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a neural pathway, right? And once you open it up and the more you have it, the more you can have it on demand. Where, look, I look at orgasms as barometers, right? If a woman isn't having these experiences, then what have we missed? There's some kind of block that's in the way, right? And look, if you think about even G-spot orgasms, there's all kinds of information online about use two fingers and a come hither motion, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if all that information's out there, why aren't 100% of the people having them? So it's obviously beyond just physical technique. And the huge missing piece is surrender. It's opening and being able to let go, being vulnerable, bringing down all of your walls and showing up sexually like that. And no place is that demanded more than with the cervix, right? The cervix is full heart opening and showing up. So these kinds of orgasms are pretty unlikely, if not impossible, to occur in a casual sex situation because the name of the game in casual sex is to close your heart and to put up walls, right? And so that is not the environment we're looking for. We're looking for the opposite of that, which is full opening, walls down, vulnerability, cultivating trust within yourself that you can open and let go, and then trust with your partner that it's safe to open and let go. And the mantra that we use for men is if you fall, like if I fall, will you catch me? Right. So when the feminine is opening and surrendering to these deep, cataclysmic, life-changing levels, is the man actually able to hold that space and catch her when she falls, when she's in this cataclysm of deep surrender, crazy, tumultuous, wild opening, can he hold that space? And if he can't, that also will show up in that field and she won't go there. Right. So it's a dance between the two of them to cultivate. And look, the key ingredient of gourmet sex is surrender. That has to be there. And that's the thing, the body doesn't lie. So, where people can rationalize, oh, science says that this orgasm, doesn't actually exist. Like these people have never been properly fucked, right? They're all underfucked and coming from a place of underfucked ignorance in their work. Like they're basically showing you this is how I don't know how to have sex. Like rather than people who've done the work and gone the distance and have these experiences, but they'll tell you it's almost like a spiritual journey of having to unwind and heal and get to this very deep and courageous place of surrender and jumping off a cliff into the abyss, right? It's really akin to the spiritual quest of learning to surrender to God, spirit, energy, the universe, whatever you want to call it, that relationship is, where to me, like spiritual surrender and sexual surrender are very much the same thing. And the more you surrender sexually, the more you can carry that out into your spiritual life, the better you are at spiritually surrendering, that'll help your sexual life. So they both feed each other.
That's so interesting, but it seems that societal norms are pushing against that very narrative with regards to empowering women purportedly by way of having more casual sex. All the major universities are having education that favors or sort of promotes tacitly having casual sex, as particularly for women, so long as it's safe sex and things like that. But if you look at all available statistics, that is not necessarily empowering women or making them more happy, and possibly increasing their risk of being exposed to trauma and abuse and other things. So for women that have been indoctrinated by this way of thinking that is now normalized, how do they sort of unlearn that and go about having these healthy relationships and learning to surrender and having a long-term partnership?
Well, it definitely has been programming, right? This narrative that casual sex is really cool. And like, as a woman, you can do this too. I don't think it's healthy for either partner, and there's no judgment there. Like for me, the the assessment is always, does this give me high quality energy and help build me into a better person or not? Right. And that's my assessment. It's not a moral judgment thing going on there. And in my view, yeah, like when you have that surrender that's multidimensional, emotional, physical, spiritual, psychological, that's where you come out of these experiences reborn and the best version of yourself. And if you are using sex as a sleep aid or stress relief, like that's the lowest, most base course use of sex, right? It's just is one is about becoming unconscious, one is about becoming more conscious. And so in my work and my podcasts and Instagram, it's all about trying to like show people what's possible, right? So this is the messaging you might have picked up, but here's what's actually available to you. And one big argument for that would be, look, these life-changing orgasms that are, say, available for women, G-spot, cervical, ejaculation, squirting, they're not going to happen in casual sex situations, right? So what is that telling us, right? The body, the psyche is like, hold up, this isn't a safe situation. We can't actually open up. I really encourage people to follow the path of conscious celibacy while they're working through their stuff and cultivating this, like doing their own healing, up leveling their own vibration so they can attract a higher quality partner. And that if they're going through my salons, my programs, that better to be single and there's home play for couples and singles, because then otherwise there's no point just grabbing a partner to do exercises with, because you're not, in my work at least, you won't get the benefit, right? All of my work hinges on this notion of full open surrender and connection, intimate connection and agreement. So casual sex doesn't really work in my world.
Yeah. I don't know that it really works in a lot of worlds. I mean, some people might be fulfilled short term, but I think ultimately they're longing for that deeper connection. And I think the argument for women is there's no high quality men to date anymore. And then the argument for men is, women don't want a man to be in a traditional male female roles where one is surrendering, the female is surrendering to the male, right? So there's competing forces here going on. So what would you say to those two arguments?
Well, I'm curious, in your community, that seems like it's geared more towards these primal ideas and stepping back more into these archetypal masculine and feminine roles. Do you not see more of people accepting that, or do you still feel that there's a lot of people rebelling against that?
The people that I see commenting and my people that I collaborate with or friends and so forth certainly believe the way that I do. But when I talk to people who are new to health and things like that, often men that are single, they do struggle in the dating world because a lot of women, generally are go to liberal arts colleges and want to. They're confused about the type of man that they're looking for. On the one hand, they want a man who will pay for the dinner, open the doors, and so forth. But on the other hand, they don't want to submit to a man, for example, and don't want traditional sort of roles in a relationship. So I do hear conflicting aspects of it. So I think it is challenging for people. And so I don't know. I think, like you said, though, the ultimate way to go about this is to be consciously celibate and to work on yourself. And like you said, become the person that someone would want to date and be in an exclusive monogamous relationship with. And you will attract the right person who has also presumably done the work as well. So I think that's probably that's a message that I share with people. But
Yeah, I agree with that fully. That if you're still attracting people who don't seem to be a fit for you and aren't reflecting what you think are your ideals, then I'd say somewhere there's more work for you to do to be embodying your ideals more, because whatever you're radiating out into the world is what people are picking up on. And that if that's an old story, it sounds like the proof is in the pudding, right? If you've really moved beyond that story, you're going to be attracting a different caliber of person. And so, the outcome, what we see in our day-to-day physical life is always giving us that feedback and information of where we're at. So if we're bringing in a certain kind of person, it's like, okay, well, that's information. I'm not where I guess I thought I was. I've got some more work to do to up level and take that conscious time. And look, it could take a few months, it could take a few years, right? And to be committed to the journey of really diving in and doing your own internal feng shui, getting really honest. And this is what my programs guide people through, is these are all the places to look and areas to heal, activate, strengthen your sexual energy as a life force so that you can better shape and create your whole reality. And that includes what you magnetize to you. And there's a phenomenon in my work that I've dubbed the well-fucked woman or the well-fucked man, where you reach a place of inhabiting your sexual energy to such a degree that you radiate out a charisma, a magnetism that then begins to draw all of these people and opportunities to you because you are wearing this creative life force power of the universe. You are now harnessing it in your life. And it is so fully magnetic and attractive that people are drawn to it like moths to the flame. And we have all these stories of, like a woman who was doing my practices, self-pleasuring one night, the next day goes into town to run some errands. She's literally pumping gas in her sweats and flip-flops, hair up, and she gets hit on by two guys who come galloping across the parking lot to ask for her number. And she's like, seriously? And it's because she's radiating this energy that's palpable to the people around her. So you become imbued with this aura of well fuckingness that people tune into. And so your actual sexual energy inhabiting that. And that, again, it doesn't just mean having lots of sex, but it's learning to cultivate this energy and consciously use it for rejuvenation and creativity, that you begin to inhabit it in such a way that you're wearing it like an aura out into the world that people feel and notice. It's fully magnetic. And at the same time, you also build this energy of not giving a fuck, right? Of not caring about other people's opinions, not succumbing to the judgments of others, not being afraid of cancel culture. Like, you're able to speak your truth because you're more loyal to that voice, and it becomes unstoppable. You become unstoppable because you are so much inhabiting your true nature and self that you're not trying not to care what other people think of you. You just don't care. And it's within that whole field that you then bring in these high quality people.
That's amazing. And I would imagine that if you were having this type of gourmet sex in a long-term relationship, that it would help offset the decrease in desire that many researchers and many people who have been in a long-term relationship usually experience. I think there was some statistic after a year of dating, sex cuts by, the episodes of sexual encounters decrease by some 50% or something like that. Have you found with couples that are practicing this gourmet sex and going through your work, they probably increase desire with their partners over time? What are some tools there for people that are coupled and in long-term relationships?
Yeah, great question. And I've never bought into that narrative. It always seemed to me to be faulty, that this kind of, oh, we weren't meant to be sexually turned on for decades. And it's normal to not want to have sex after the first year or two. And then you just have to suck it up for what, the rest of your lives? Like, come on, that doesn't actually even make sense. So, no, in the whole Anami gourmet sex world, we've got couples who are been married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, who are having the best sex of their lives, right? Who have sex multiple times a day, have sex weekends and sex week adventures that they plan out. And some of them were in a dip before they came into this work, and now they've improved that dip, or they had good sex and now they're having off the chart sex, or some of them weren't being very sexually connected and they've resurrected that. So, it's a whole program of my work, but it's generally like the emotional and sexual components, is that you have to have this same level of emotional openness and surrender and vulnerability, and the same sexually. And that's the magic formula. And people as much as we might want to rationalize, like we live in a culture of don't ask, don't tell, white lies are better, sins of omission. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. Where I'm a proponent, and in my work, a foundational concept is radical honesty, is having full, open communication and expression. And when the couples, without exception, who have become in some sort of stagnation with each other, a big piece of that would be that they're not actually honest with each other anymore. There's things that have been unresolved, unspoken, things that they want that they're afraid to ask for, and all of these things, like the princess and the pea, except the pea goes in, it's a giant mound that's in the bed, and they can't figure out why they keep falling out of the bed. So that's a huge piece of it. And then prioritizing sex is realizing, and, in my view, the word anami in Sanskrit means there's always another level to go. Is that when you reach what you think is enlightenment, that's not a static state. There's always another level and another level and another level ad infinitum. And so, in my work, I talk about something called conscious monogamy, which is, I say that 99.9% of people think they have monogamy, but they don't. Meaning maybe or maybe not, they're not having sex with other people, but they haven't truly opened emotionally and sexually to the full, raw, honest, radical sharing depths that they could, and bringing those pieces of themselves to each other. And within that container of conscious monogamy is when we have the ultimate growth and evolution, healing, full utilization of our sexual power. And, when people say, well, it's really boring to have sex with the same person for 20 years. Well, look, if you're committed to stagnation, then indeed you are having sex with the same person for 20 years. But if you're committed to growth and evolution, then you and your partner are constantly changing into new and better versions of yourselves. And you're actually not having sex with the same person for 20 years or even 6 months, because you're always growing. And your relationship is the best alchemical container in which to do that. So in that view, then that kind of stagnation just doesn't happen, because you're always reaching for that next level and next level of evolution that, like I said, I believe is infinite, even within two people, together for decades.
That's a great perspective. And there's so many different things you can explore. I mean, from role play to a sex swing to emotional intimacy. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to this. You're not always having the same type of sex, which I think is really important, and keeping things a little bit more intentional. And I would love to explore more on prioritizing sex and planning that. Especially people with young children and things, these sex weekends that you talk about, or sex dates for people who are in a monogamous relationship, to have a healthy relationship. Do you suggest starting out with like 2 days a week? Hey, we're going to put on the calendar. We're going to structure emotional intimacy prior, what have you. How does that look, practically speaking?
Yeah, I recommend that people have a weekly 3-hour sex date, and then another, ideally, a couple of sex dates planned in addition to that are maybe shorter, like 45 minutes, an hour. And the weekly 3-hour sex date is a non-negotiable, set in stone, put in the calendar. It happens every week, no matter what. So whatever it takes to make that happen, you take an afternoon off of work, you have childcare set up, you do trades with people to have childcare, whatever it takes, you make it work. Or, you stay up from 9 till midnight, or whenever you can carve out that time. But that's like going into an energy incubator where you literally recharge, you plug into each other, you gain so much energy from that experience. And to be clear, the 3-hour sex date is not a movie, a dinner, walk in a park, and then half an hour of sex. It's 3 hours of being naked and intimate and massaging and oral play and manual play and intercourse. And when people first hear that, they're often like, 3 hours of sex, how can we do that? And then they start doing it. And then they're like, yeah, we had to stop at 6 hours because we had to get up and go to work in the morning. So it becomes the proof is always in the pudding. When you do it and you see what it does for your energy levels and your relationship, and you go to work and maybe you've only had 2 hours of sleep, then and you're like more creative, more patient, more loving than ever, and you're floating through the entire day, you're like, huh, maybe the energy that I harvested from that experience was even more beneficial than the amount of sleep I'm told. And I'm not advocating for 2 hour sleep nights all, all the time, but I'm just using that as an example to say that you gain so much energy. And just also to say that the big barometric question I always ask people is, does sex leave you feeling energized, rejuvenated, transformed, ecstatic, and like it changed your life? And if the answer is no, then you're doing it wrong. Meaning your sex life ought to give you energy rather than deplete you with energy. So another time that can be really good for a busy couple is mornings. If you've got children, is set your alarm, get up at 5 or 4 or whatever, get up an hour before everybody else gets up and have that intimate time, even like an hour of that intimate time. And connecting dates. I say that people also ought to set, if you're not doing all these things naturally, if you don't naturally have a 3 hour sex date a week, if you don't naturally have another couple hours of sex dates throughout the week, if you don't naturally sit and have intimate conversations about the inner workings of your connection and your relationship, then you need to schedule them. Right? It's like if you don't schedule it, it doesn't get done. If it's happening, great, but most people need to schedule it at least until they get into the rolling habit of doing it. So the connection dates are about having these conversations to resolve what I said, like what is the buildup of stuff that we haven't talked about, we've been afraid to talk about, we've let pile up over the months, years, decades of being together. And I guarantee that that stuff is all in the space with you, even if it seems invisible. You are bumping into it and tripping over it, and it's showing up in your bed as low libido, lack of lubrication, erectile issues, premature ejaculation, period problems. I guarantee that any unresolved issues within your relationship and connection are showing up in the fabric of your intimacy and in your sexual reproductive organs.
Yeah, that's really well said. There's tons of literature showing the connection between the quality and sexual satisfaction is tied to relationship satisfaction, right? So I think that, prioritizing this is really important for your relationship. Really good evidence for that. And then I will add, and I want you to comment on these two aspects. What really changed this for me uh, is when I was married, sex was like 15 minutes max. It was very, very short. And then
15, like 1 5.
1 5. Yeah, this was free. And our relationship just fell apart. We ended up separated and we co-parent great together. We're still friends and all that sort of stuff. 15 minutes. But it was very unsatisfactory for both of us. It was more like an obligatory performatory aspect. Now, went through an intentional celibate period for about a year, met a great partner, and our sessions last from on the low end 45 minutes, on the long side up to 3 hours, like you're talking about. Um, and what shifted my mindset on this and wanting to prioritize intimacy was learning more about how heterosexual couples versus lesbians, the duration of sex was like 3 times. So most heterosexual couples, their time having sex and intercourse is under 30 minutes versus in lesbian couples, it's north of 45 minutes because there's warm up, there's emotional intimacy, there's all these foreplay. It seems that most heterosexual couples sort of rush that. And so if you don't rush that, you have a much better sexual experience, the gourmet sex that you're referring to. So any comments there?
Well, I'm all about the extended sex dates, and that's why I talk about the 3 hour sex dates, and ideally, even the shorter sessions are 45 minutes to an hour. And this idea of sex weekends, right? Where you have an entire weekend to devote to each other. And that's recognizing that your relationship is your superpower. And that is where you literally, literally go to plug in and recharge with each other and generate all this energy that you can take into your lives. And so that's why it's so important to prioritize that, because rather than, oh, we're so busy, we have so many priorities, we don't have time to have sex. No, 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 you got it wrong. If you're that busy and so much going on, you need to be having more sex than ever to give you the fuel to take on all of these challenges gracefully and with a huge amount of energy and creativity and mental focus in your life that you will all source from your bedroom connection. So, um, I've always been a proponent of using the time that way. Basically, the formula is this: the more time that you take, the more energy you harvest, right? And I'm all about harvesting energy from our sexual connection. So, yeah, I'm all about bliss and pleasure, but like to me, also a crucial piece of that is that this literally where we go to harvest energy to channel into our lives. And that's kind of the great secret and like obscuring about sex, right? That our sexual energy is this life force, procreative energy that we literally all have at our fingertips. And with all of the messaging and taboo and the censorship, that's completely removed, right? We get such a distortion of what sex is. And if you were to watch the media, TV, advertising, you would think that all sexual encounters last a grand total of 7 seconds, right? Like, and the guy always has an orgasm, but does the woman? Who knows? Who cares, right? Like, that's the dominant messaging we get from, as long as I can remember, of what sex looks like.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're helping people reframe this and helping people understand that having gourmet sex, in your own words, obviously it's pleasurable and so forth, but it has these transcendent, or it transfers into other categories of life that are really important for being successful and being a good parent and being creative and all that, which I think is really important for people to understand. So, Kim, we could talk all day about all these different aspects. I definitely want folks to know more about the tools, this jade egg. You sell this on your website?
Yeah, I have so my main website is kimanami.com, and I have a shop called Anami Alchemia, which has all kinds of accessories from Venetian hand-blown couture dildos to organic body oils to the jade egg kit that people can buy with instructions, and they can start their jade egg journey tonight. And then on my main kimanami.com site, I have my what I call sexual savant salons, and these are programs for men, women, and vaginas. There's vaginal kung fu, coming together for couples, how to be a well-fucked woman, sexual mastery for men, and Sexy Mama, which is an ecstatic birth and orgasmic pregnancy salon. So because that's kind of like the the end point punctuation, the ultimate orgasm to have. So those salons run throughout the year. They all run once a year. And the next one coming up is Sexual Mastery for Men, and then Vaginal Kung Fu in early New Year. So these are my online 10-week programs where we go deep into all of this material, where there's video content, a members area, we have live calls throughout the week that you can be supported on this journey, where there's material within that members area that I don't share anywhere else, which is really the step-by-step guides of how to achieve all of these things. And then I have a podcast, Orgasmic Enlightenment, where we share, as I said, interviews with our all-stars and all kinds of free content, as well as my Instagram. But the salons are where we take everything to the next level.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And so the course for men that's coming up in September, right?
Yes.
And so I think a lot of men are learning how to edge, but you are teaching men how to have orgasms without ejaculation. Do you want to kind of finish up on that, how that's possible and how men might benefit from that?
Right. So, look, edging is great in terms of building stamina. I always say that the number one sexual skill for men to master is stamina, right? Without stamina, you have nothing. If you are pulling out of the game within 3 to 5 minutes, which 75 to 95% of men are, a woman is never going to reach her full orgasmic potential. She's never going to have vaginal orgasms. And if she's not having those things, she's underfucked. And an underfucked woman is going to be the death of you. Like, she will let you know about her pain in every possible way. Like when people talk about like naggy, clingy women, I'm like, well, she's underfucked. Like if you're just telling me that that's what's going on. Anyway, so yes, the ultimate goal for men is not just to semen retain, but to learn to orgasm without ejaculation. So you have the best of all possible worlds. You are still having full body, ecstatic, transcendental orgasms that are increased in the way that I teach men to do it. But you're also holding on to your fluids, right? Which there have been millennia of documentation, and even from the time of Galen and Hippocrates, talking about the reckless spending of seed and how the male body goes to so much effort to create all of these substances that are literally meant to make a new life with every ejaculation, and that it's wasteful and depleting for the men to be dumping those out all of the time, right? And their comments again weren't moral. They were more like, this is very precious seed. And so the best solution that I found is showing men that they can have a full orgasm and still hold on to that seed and regenerate themselves with it.
Mm. And so, in terms of semen retention, there's all these different Taoist principles about the intervals between full ejaculation and so forth, and the amount of time that you want to, how many days in between. Do you think there's some pretty good value there for men to not ejaculate frequently?
100%. I mean, again, the proof is in the pudding. All you need to do is test it out and see how you feel afterward. And my view is like, I think the Taoist adage is basically a spring cleaning and a fall cleaning, like twice a year, just to clean out the pipes. But like, I've seen these other so-called formulas and like age, this much you can, I don't buy into any of that. And again, if you've actually done it or cultivated it, but the difference is it's not just I'm going to blue ball myself into not coming in like this crazy act of will. No, you're learning how to breathe this energy, recirculate this energy, and revitalize yourself with it. And if you're learning to do that, you will never have blue balls. You will only feel like you want to go to the gym after you have sex or run a marathon. Like one of our favorite all-stars, Anthony Kunkel, is an ultra marathoner. And he heard me use that phrase. He's like, I said, you should feel like you want to run a marathon after you have sex. He's like, well, yeah, I do. I want to run one before and after. So he
Wow.
got into my work. We have his episode's called Marathon Man, Marathon Cock. And he's talked about how using this work for him and practicing these things has increased his run scores. Like he's done incredibly well by using these principles to give him that extra edge that most men just wouldn't have.
That's
Right.
amazing.
So, there's all kinds of men who, that whole adage of don't come before the big game, right? That people from boxers to musicians, everyone from Miles Davis, to God, like, was it Steve Jobs even talked about that? Like all these men who've talked about that over the years. But like I said, I'm not advocating for just pure semen retention. I'm saying that we need to be more conscious and up level beyond that into recirculating this energy and being able to then harness this energy and channel it out into the world rather than just like, oh, I didn't come, I'm trying not to come, I won. Like, no, that's like sort of lower end poor man's tantra, I would call it, right? Like we're talking about how to elevate and consciously use these things in your life. And, open up this whole psychedelic avenue, right? Like that's what these practices ultimately we're aiming to do is take this sexual energy and use it as a ladder to elevate us into higher spiritual realms. And I talk about the psychedelics of sex, right? Like you don't well, to each their own, but I'm saying that the places people use plants to access, we can get that from within ourselves and by learning to channel consciously this sexual energy. So it's really so much deeper and richer than just not coming, at least in my world, right? And
Yeah.
how I show people to do this so that you feel this full high. Sex gets you high. It's meant to get you high. It's meant to heal you. It's meant to bring you into spiritual states of altered awareness. It's meant to do all of these things. And that's the crux of what I teach.
Wow, that's amazing, Kim. So I'll put links to all those resources in the podcast description and also on YouTube. You're on Instagram. This men's course, when does that start specifically?
I believe registration opens at the end of August and it starts in the first or second week of September.
Amazing. That sounds cool. I'll definitely be checking that out. Kim Anami, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all your wisdom. Is there any parting advice for couples that something we didn't talk about or something that you wish all couples or sexually active people should know?
Your sexual connection and your relationship is your secret weapon. That is where you can gain all of your energy from. Like I said earlier, when you're feeling like life is overwhelming and you have children and chores and responsibilities, and you're tempted to forego sex because you're so busy, it's the opposite. You need to be having more sex and trust and put your faith in me that like by having more sex and more gourmet sex, you will become so much more energized, patient, loving, compassionate, creative, intelligent, problem solving, in tune with the flow of the universe, that you'll become unstoppable. You'll have more energy and more power than ever. And you'll get that from your connection, right? Like that is the entire point of being together, is that you become a channel for the life force of the universe through your sexual connection. So it's worth prioritizing. And if you need more encouraging on that, listen to my podcast and listen to these all stars tell their stories of going from, X to Y and the changes that it had for them, that you can just keep reinforcing to yourself. Like, a lot of people come into my work thinking, okay, but it won't happen for me. Nice for them, but I'm the only one who it won't work for. And that's why I love to show off our all-stars, to be like, yeah, they thought just like you that they were going to be the special exception. And they had even more obstacles to overcome in terms of sexual trauma and heinous experience. Not everyone does, but some people do, right? That you would be like, wow. And they were able to work through that and now become these multi-orgasmic sexual superstars, rocking all of these experiences. And that's, again, the Anami guarantee. It's possible for everyone, even you.
Love that. Kim Anami, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.